back, everybody. This is another episode of the Exodus Project. I'm your host, Steve Eisenhower, and today I have a very special guest with me, Luanne Hunt, another YouTube Noachide, a light in the world of religiosity here. Check her out on YouTube, In the Light with Luanne Hunt. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. How about yourself?
Doing great, and this is the first time we've met. I'm really excited. I've actually had some friends and colleagues say you got to get Luanne on the show, so I'm glad we can finally do this.
Yeah, me too.
Cool. Yeah, so I've noticed. Oh, before I forget, everyone hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, give Luanne and I a big thumbs up. And check the description for any resources you may need. And as I said, be sure to check out her YouTube channel and subscribe there as well. So before we got started, we were, having a little talk about the first time you saw Rabbi Singer. Rabbi Singer's a good friend of mine. Had him on the show. He's been on your show. Why don't you just tell everyone real quick about that first experience seeing Rabbi Singer in Hollywood, Florida?
I went down there, it was a few weeks ago, and as I told you, I had never stepped foot in a synagogue, so it was a very interesting experience. And they sent the women upstairs when the men came out to pray, and I just went along with it, but I'm thinking, this is a whole other world, right?
Right.
I was very respectful, and my fiance stayed downstairs with the men, and he didn't know what they were saying when they were praying, but he loved it. He said it was just so spiritual.
Wow.
And we had a really wonderful time, and then Rabbi came on and spoke about the Christian missionaries that are always trying to snatch the Jews away and different ways that they could be talked to prevent this from happening, because I guess this is a huge deal, especially over in Israel.
Oh, yeah.
But as always, Rabbi Singer was fantastic at getting across the information. There was a lot of good questions asked, and it was just a beautiful night. There was probably over 100 people there.
Wow. Baruch Hashem. It's awesome. Very cool. Glad to see people hungry for this type of thing still in a world that's every day seeming more and more godless. People just don't care about these kind of things. Glad to see that there are still some beautiful people out there that, care about religion and care about learning about Hashem, and so that it brings my heart a little bit of joy, with all the things that you see on social media and the news, and it's like everything's just out there to tear you down, but there's always something. Strengthen your faith. I recently just did a show about some archaeology in Israel. They found a pottery fragment that has the name of Gideon on it, and I thought that was incredible, faith boosting,
Yeah, it's exciting what's happening over there. There's
sure.
A lot of stuff, and I don't know if your viewers might want to know this, but there's a website. It's at the Temple Institute.
Oh yeah, yep.
I don't know if you know about that, but anyway, they put all the latest updates of things related to the temple and the rebuilding of it. So I check that periodically because it's exciting. You keep reading it and going, oh my gosh, they found another artifact or something.
Right.
So.
Sure. So you have you just released a book. You want to talk about that a little bit? Share it out with everyone?
Yes, it's called Jesus, Messiah, or Myth. And I basically am just exposing all of the discrepancies in the New Testament and how it was taken and just mangled. So they took all the Hebrew scriptures and just mangled them to put together this New Testament. And of course, it's shocking because it seems like every day as I study, I find something more. But I tried to hit the key points.
Right.
Some of the big topics, like the origins of Jesus. Because if you do your research, you see that he was constructed from pagan myths.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
It's very obvious. It's not anything you can really hide from because it's all over the internet. You can Google it.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
So I talk about that and this nonsensical virgin birth story and how they concocted that. And like I said, some of the hot topics that people are always discussing online. And I just gave a little bit more in-depth information, but the book is a quick read, and people can go to my website, insidethefaith.com, and read the book right on my website completely free.
Awesome. And I will put the link for that in the description for anyone who may want to visit it and read that book. Sounds like a brilliant resource, and I'm sure you're going to learn some things. So now to the meat of the presentation, of the broadcast. So, how long has it been since you left Christianity? I recently, I know I stumbled across your channel within the last year. I don't know if it was prior to that, or if you started the channel right around when it was occurring, or just give us a little timeline.
Well, my husband of 36 years died in 2019,
Oh,
and he
sorry.
was a staunch Christian, born again, the whole thing. And I had, prior to his death, a few years, prior, I had been seeing some discrepancies and things. And I tried to talk to him about it, but he shut me down real fast. So at the time, I was also studying a lot of metaphysical teachings.
Okay.
And I was looking at the Bible from a metaphysical viewpoint. And when I started looking at everything like that, that's when I really began to wonder about the whole story of Jesus and everything. Mm-hmm. Things just didn't add up.
Right.
I mean, the metaphysical or New Age world, they teach you that your thoughts become things, and what you intend is what will be in your life, and
right.
that you are responsible for every choice you make, every thought you think, every action that you make, right?
Right.
So for me, I'm thinking to myself, okay, so if this is true, and I believe that it is, then why is it that Christianity wants to say that you could just believe in some savior, and that's going to wipe out all your karma, right?
You get a clean
It doesn't
slate.
even make any sense.
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
Sure.
So I was looking at things like that, and also scriptures where Jesus said he wasn't God, and I kept thinking, well, if he said he's not God, why are people worshiping him, So anyway, the questions were all there, but I think that after my husband died, I just felt a freedom to really start exploring on my own, and I didn't have to worry about getting a divorce over something like this, right?
Right.
So
I hear that,
I just prayed, and I asked God to show me the way, whatever it was. I almost went to a Messianic church, but then I didn't do it, which I'm glad. And after a spouse dies, there's a lot to do, so I was pretty preoccupied with just getting my life back on track, and wasn't really thinking spiritually. But then I met my fiance, and we moved here to Florida, and I started thinking, I want to start seeking again. And then eventually I found Rabbi Singer's videos.
Right.
And I had already had a really strong passion for the Jews and Israel. And I don't know where that came from initially, because it just welled up inside of me one day. And this was like several years ago. And now all of a sudden I understood why the passion was there, because everything connected.
Yeah. Cool. Beautiful. It's beautiful. I totally hear how you're talking about the metaphysical aspects of the universe and all these things. You put it in the universe and it manifests, that type of thing. Because it defies logic how Christianity really looks at what they would call Jesus' sacrifice, right? I mean, you even had first century apostles or deacons of the earliest church, that were creating heresies because they believed that the death of Jesus was so final that you basically had a blank slate to sin. You could do anything you wanted, and it was covered by the blood, Which is crazy. Which is crazy to think that the earliest church had breakoffs like that so soon. I think they were called the Nicolaitans. They're addressed in the book of Revelation. Basically just go do whatever you want, sin as much as you want, because you can get away with it now, and that's really that was the outlook. So yeah, it's when you just sit back and think, especially when you have a rabbi explain to you, like just their worldview. You're like, wow, just the amount of sense this makes compared to what I believed my whole life. You know.
Right, right. I know. Like I said, as soon as I heard Rabbi Singer talking, the light bulb went on for me because I'm all about personal accountability, and I
Sure.
realize that's what
Sure.
Judaism is about.
Yeah, definitely.
So spiritually, I was already in alignment with this faith. I just didn't know that it was Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to Rabbi Michael Skobac, for instance, sometimes he'll get into the metaphysical aspects and the really deep spiritual aspects of the faith, and it's breathtaking.
Right. Right.
So but the other day I did a video about how we have to do our own work in life. We can't just expect that some savior is going to save us, and we don't get a hall pass, right, for
Right.
just believing.
Right.
And some lady wrote to me and she said, I don't know why you want to think that you have to do your work. She said, it's just too hard. She said, isn't it just easier to believe that it is free and you don't have to do anything? I mean, it was funny, but he was serious. And
Yeah.
I thought, are you kidding? God made us for his pleasure, and he makes that clear in Tanakh. So part of that is us getting it, us doing the work
Right.
to understand what we're supposed to do and how we become righteous before
Sure.
him.
Sure.
And that's what glorifies him, right?
Right.
There.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I think that's what does make Christianity so, like what the draw is. That's what makes it so enticing. Is that instant gratification aspect of I just believe and now we're good. It's like the drive-through at MacDonald's. I'm hungry. I don't want to make my own food. I can just drive through McDonald's and they can give me some garbage. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a pretty likening metaphor.
Well, God told Cain, he said, you can overcome your sin.
Yeah.
You can master it.
Yep. It crouches at the door, but you can master over it.
He doesn't change his mind,
Yep.
right? He said it, and he doesn't change his mind. So why would he change the program? Doesn't even make sense.
Right. So in this transition, what would you say some of the most, I guess, eye-opening or influential verses, the contradictions you saw that really impacted you the most, that really got your foot out the door?
The virgin birth thing really blew my mind because I could have never imagined that the New Testament writers would take a wrong word and put it in there. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I saw that, you can't unsee it.
Right.
Okay, so virgin, the word for virgin is betula, and the word here is alma, meaning a young woman. And this is actually Isaiah's wife.
Yep.
And it's so clear what's going on, and I'm thinking Christians must not be reading it. I know I didn't read it like that.
No.
I just took it at face value.
Yeah, especially when you weigh it next to Isaiah. Like if you don't believe us on Isaiah 7, read Isaiah 8. And it clears it all up. It's one of those things. I look back and I'm like, man, was I really studying as hard as I thought I was? 'Cause I was a preacher. I was a preacher in a Pentecostal church, and I studied the Bible a lot. But was I really studying it, or was I just reading Was I just reading what Joe Schmo Christian's commentary was?
Your brain will play tricks on you based on your beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
It's really weird, but that's how it works. So if you're going in reading it with this Christological viewpoint, you're not going to see what it says.
Right.
It's really weird, but that's how it works. So thank goodness that we who have seen this did finally wake up.
Right.
Because you think, wow, I would hate to think that I never was able to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you what, I taught myself how to read Hebrew, and talk about truly an eye-opening experience. Like, I really agree when the rabbis say you cannot read the Bible until you read it in Hebrew. Like, it was just so many things when you start to see how roots relate to one another and how you can get context just by what word is there. It's incredible. So I really would impress upon any viewer here to at least try to learn Hebrew, at least try to recognize the letters. It's so important. So the virgin birth. Were you noticing that prior to Rabbi Singer that the virgin birth was a problem, or was it after?
No, it wasn't until I heard him talking about it. And then I thought, wow, and I kept watching his videos and hearing him talking on all these subjects. And the one thing that really got me was Paul the Apostle and his complete lies.
Yeah.
I did a whole video on him being a cult leader.
Mm-hmm.
That guy has all the attributes of a cult leader.
Oh, sure.
And then he admits it, right? He says, oh, to the Jews I become a Jew. To this one I become this one. Like, he's going to be like the smarmy salesman and just tell you what you want to hear to get your money kind of thing. And I'm like, this guy, he was evil. But I think that he knew that he had sinned so badly. And he probably figured he was not even savable. So he invented this idea that you could just be vicariously saved, I mean, I don't know, but he was like a crazed madman or something, like a David Koresh.
Sure.
But it was so easy for me to see it once I caught on to what was happening.
Sure. What's funny about Paul is he even says the same of himself. Colossians 1:24, he mentions that he completes the afflictions of Christ through his own sufferings for the church. Philippians 2:17, he tells the church to rejoice, even if I myself am poured out as a wine offering for you. So he's saying he makes himself into this pseudo Jesus. So you're right, like he makes this cultic idea. A friend of mine, a Haredi fella, he told me, he's like, Paul sounds like the kind of person that heard one midrash and like a bedtime story, you know what I mean, and made a religion out of it, and he just totally went off the deep end. And I thought that was a kind of cool outlook from a Jewish person who was raised with these teachings. How he heard what the kind of things Paul said, and he's like, yeah, this just sounds like some crazy Jew who went off the deep end, with some over spiritualized idea. And how you mentioned that he saw himself as unsavable. It's funny because whenever he needs to pad his resume a little bit, he says, oh, I was blameless according to the law, but Jesus, So he's definitely that chameleon, as you mentioned. I become all things to all men, for sure.
You don't trust anyone who says that, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But again, we all missed it somehow. We all missed it.
Mm-hmm. And what denomination of Christianity did you come from? I mean,
I grew up Catholic.
Wow, okay.
But I didn't stick with that. And I went and I explored all these other religions. I was a Buddhist for a while, and I studied the Jehovah's Witnesses. So when I met my husband and he told me he was a Christian, I really didn't want to be with a guy who was a Christian because I thought they were nutty. The ones I had met, And he and I had a lot of really heated arguments in the beginning. But then we got married, and his family, talk about holy rollers, these people
were they Pentecostals?
Yes.
Nice. So I was raised Pentecostal too. Yeah. So I can totally understand. Yeah.
They were over the top. Yeah. And his mom, every other word out of her mouth was Jesus this and Jesus that.
Yeah.
And everything was Jesus, 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 Jesus.
Yeah.
And they were really pressuring me. And so I thought finally, well, they're going to hate me if I don't join them, right?
Sure.
So
if you can't beat them, join them, right?
I became a Christian. And I was really sincere about it. It's not like I just did it flippantly. I mean,
sure.
I really did my best to adopt this faith. And I stayed in it a long time. I wrote Christian songs my whole career, right? Mm-hmm. So
I can honestly say that when I was a Christian, what I can see about the draw of like the charismatic / Pentecostal movement is you go into one of their churches on a Sunday and you're going to have some type of euphoric spiritual experience.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And
Right.
there's a
I know.
reason there's a reason why Pentecost is the quickest growing Christian denomination. One, because rapid proselytization, and two, it's going for the lay folk. I'm just being honest here. You don't really find too many intellectuals in there. And three, you're having such an emotional experience. If I assume since you went to a Pentecostal church, you experienced like talking in tongues and so on and so forth, you're going to have some type of spiritual encounter. Now, I'm not saying it's true and I'm not saying it's correct, but it is a spiritual encounter, however you want to chop it up. So I truly believe that's why it is so enticing and why that sect especially is growing. But where you find the issue in it is it doesn't have a very high retention rate, because after that initial experience and all your miracles aren't coming true anymore, you're right back out on the streets. You know.
It's true. Well, I know I can tell you this, and I haven't really been able to talk about this much to anyone, but most of the time when I went to church, I'd leave there in a bad mood
Sure.
because I just didn't, something about it just didn't seem right. I couldn't even put my finger on it, but
Right.
something the pastor would say would seem so weird or off
Mm-hmm.
base, and I'd be thinking, who the heck are these people and why am I here?
Yeah. Well,
I
it
just never
probably it
could
probably
quite.
felt very tyrannical for you, didn't it? Because it's very like dictatorial when you have the. I mean, like every Pentecostal church, in my opinion, is like a mini cult because you have the pastor and he's it. He's the singular authority. You know.
Mm-hmm. Well, that it felt, dictatorial, but it also felt inauthentic, if that makes any sense.
Sure. Sure.
It just felt inauthentic. I'm very intuitive. I mean, really intuitive. And I can tell you about any situation I'm in. So if there's anything going on that isn't right, I will pick up on it.
Right.
And I didn't know it at the time, but I think that's what was happening, where
Oh, sure.
that intuition was telling me, run.
Yeah. Run as fast as you can. Was it a holiness church by chance? Like women didn't cut their hair and.
No, it wasn't like
Oh,
that.
okay,
No.
okay. That's the breed of Pentecostal I came from, so I can totally see what you mean about that. It wasn't authentic. When every church camp or every church service or conference, it's like a fashion show as to whose hair's the highest and whose dress is the longest. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, the other thing that irritated the heck out of me in any church that I would go to is, why are they spending so much time on announcements and all this crap? It's like, are we here to worship God, or are we here to talk about the spaghetti dinner on Sunday night?
Right.
And I used to think, look, it's not about man, it's supposed to be about God. So
Mm-hmm.
why aren't they falling on their faces before God and leaving all that other stuff out of it? It's like a meeting. It's not really a spiritual thing, it's a human thing.
Sure.
And it's a way to stroke their egos. And I'm thinking, and it's all about, who do I make friends with? And the focus wasn't right to
Right.
me.
Right. Very, very much a holier than thou attitude too. When you start
Yes.
to get into those very far right charismatic style churches, they're the only ones saved and everyone else is going to hell in a handbasket.
My late husband's mother, she said to me one day, thank God you got saved. She said, if I hadn't prayed for you,
Mm-hmm.
you'd be going to hell. That's what she told me. Talk about arrogant.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Yeah, it's tough. I grew up with it. I had to wash my mind of it, especially coming from such a denomination as that. And you can relate. It's not fun. They can be the sweetest people until they're not. That's just kind of how it is. Your first day in there, they're the sweetest people, but 5 or 6 weeks there, and now you're the topic of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, just tell them you don't believe in Jesus anymore, and you really get to know who they are.
Oh man, they'll shun you. They'll shun you like an Amish community, man. That's how it goes. That's how it goes.
I know.
So, we covered some of the things that drove you out. Did you Now you said your late husband, may he rest in peace, was part of this for about, I mean, his whole life, I'd assume.
Yeah.
And you were married for, you said, 36 years? So that means you
Hmm.
were in this for about 36 years then. When
Yeah.
you started to have these problems, these issues, did you, bring it up to the pastor? Did you ask any questions? Not get any answers, or?
I think by that point I wasn't really going to church much.
Okay.
My late husband was really a workaholic. I mean, he was married to his work, so much so that he was all consumed. So he didn't really even have a desire anymore to go to church.
Okay. Hmm.
So, and I didn't say anything to my Christian friends about it because I didn't want to get into an argument.
Right. So you didn't really, you didn't feel like you had any type of spiritual authority or spiritual mentor you could bring this up to.
No, no, I did not. I did start going to this, it's called this Centers for Spiritual Living.
Okay.
And I didn't go there every week or anything, but I'd go there periodically. And it's very metaphysical. And I really did find a nice community there, people that were like-minded and they were doing the work on themselves. They weren't trying to push the responsibility on any God figure. And they just kind of spoke my language. So that at least gave me somewhere to go and talk to people about what I was learning from a metaphysical standpoint.
Right.
And I really grew spiritually leaps and bounds through doing that, which I think was a gateway to where I am now.
Cool. Yeah, that's not really. I've done a couple of these interviews. Surprisingly, that's like the first time I've heard something like that. Going through more of a metaphysical avenue to find the truth. The only other instance I can think of is I interviewed a friend of mine, and he said he started reading the Zohar as a Christian, which, for whatever, I don't necessarily endorse that, but he said he started reading the Zohar and realized, man, Judaism has it figured out, and everyone else is like in the dust,
Mm-hmm.
which I found to be interesting. So that's kind of like a similar pathway out.
Well, what I've learned is the principles I learned about personal responsibility and about strengthening yourself within to experience an external change is the Jews way, right? The
Right.
Judaism way. I mean, it's amazing. But like I said, I was following this thing and I didn't even know that was what it was.
Right.
Because one thing about the New Agers, they'll say, oh, God is a spirit or whatever. They don't have the reverence for the Creator. And that bugged me because I'm like, I love God and I have spent extraordinary amounts of time with God in prayer and worship.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so passionate about God. And they're not. They're just
Right.
thinking it's some universal energy that's doing this.
Sure.
So that's why I couldn't totally immerse myself 100% in it because I wasn't seeing the reverence there.
Yeah, it would make it tough, definitely.
Right. But they got the principles. They definitely got the principles, but they just weren't given the one credit, right?
Sure. Yeah, and then once you were out, what was like the chain of events, to the channel, and what made you feel the need to start that and really start to share this message?
Well, I can't even remember the day that I first watched Rabbi Singer's video. I don't know why I even watched it, to be honest with you. There must have been something about the title that interested me. But I watched that, and then I watched a bunch of videos over a couple months' time. And one day, I just thought, I'm going to do a little commentary about Rabbi Singer. And I did this 3-minute video and put it up there. And within like a couple days, it had over 10,000 views on it.
Nice.
And then I see that Rabbi Singer liked it. And he writes on there, welcome home. And I was so moved that he even saw it and he made that comment. And I thought, well, I guess I'll maybe make some more videos as I'm learning. I've always been a teacher and I used to do public speaking and I love to help people learn. So I just thought, well, I can share what I've learned here on YouTube. And
Mm-hmm.
it just grew from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Very similar experience that I had, for sure. Um, yeah. I think the hardest part about this is really washing your mind of just all the filth that you carry over from Christianity, you know? So I took a few years to just study Judaism as if Christianity
Mm-hmm.
didn't exist. You know what I mean? And
Right,
I think that's a good plan of action for anyone in a situation like we were in, you know, is
right.
don't go looking for answers in lieu of Christianity. Like how does this prove Christianity wrong? Go looking for answers for the answers. You know, as if Christianity never even existed. You know, clean slate protocol. You know what I mean? I think
Right.
that's really what you need.
I've said that, I know, in my videos. People do have to just suspend all their belief systems and just read it from scratch like it's the first time you're getting the information. And then it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It makes so much sense. The other day I was at a restaurant having lunch with Jim, and there was a lady in the booth behind us, and she was going on about Jeremiah 29:11. About, God, I know the plans I have for you.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there and I was like holding on because I didn't want to get up and say nothing
Start
to
to
her,
get
but I was,
burned up. Yeah.
and I wanted to go over there and say, do you realize you have sort of taken ownership of this scripture? God wasn't even talking to you in that scripture. Do you know what that's about?
Right.
I mean, you're like taking ownership. Like they put that thing on T-shirts and
Mm-hmm.
posters, and I'm thinking,
Don't
these
even know the
people are
context.
clueless. I mean, God was talking to the Jews. He wasn't talking to them.
Right.
And it's just the ignorance is so it's so mind-blowing,
Yeah.
So but hey, I like that scripture when I was a Christian, but now I know, hey, that has nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Totally. It is one of those things. It's sometimes you have to pick your battles. You know. Um, so I totally agree. I hear people say some things. So sure that what they're saying is true. You know, and that's just one of the things that maybe I always look back and think, was I that arrogant about my faith then? I try to convince myself that I wasn't, but you know, I just don't ever remember going onto YouTube and commenting on someone else's videos saying how wrong they are about the Bible. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so
I,
yeah,
I I never do that. I never do that. I figured to each his own, and hopefully they'll see it. And if they watch me, that's great. And a lot of people try to argue with me, but Rabbi Singer told me, he said, they're like barking dogs, just ignore them. I thought that's a great
yep,
analogy.
right, definitely, definitely, little ankle biters.
Yep. I hope they get it. And a lot of people are getting it. So
Sure,
that is encouraging.
definitely. Okay, so in conclusion, one final question for you: if if you had to give advice, you know, to someone who's in the situation you were in, you know, when you first started leaving, when you first started seeing the problems and the issues, just what bit of advice would you give to that person?
I would say that it's really important to find out what the Tanakh or the Old Testament really says, to immerse yourself in study and research and learn about what was going on between God and his chosen people, because really that's what Tanakh is. It's the story of God and his chosen people. When you can read everything from that viewpoint, which is the accurate one, suddenly everything makes sense, and suddenly you start to say, wow, whatever that junk is in the New Testament, it's not even close to matching up.
Right.
So I think that's really the key,
Mm-hmm.
to learn what that book actually says, And then it's like the Jews, right? They grow up learning Hebrew, and they grow
Right.
up learning Tanakh and Torah, and they know what all these stories are about and what it's saying. So when they heard the message of Paul or somebody, they're like, "Are you kidding me? That's so
Yeah.
diametrically opposed to what
Sure.
we know is true."
Right.
And that's what you have to do. You have to learn what it's saying. Like I said earlier, those scriptures in there, they're not. God wasn't talking to you. He wasn't. Plain and simple. So that's just my 2 cents. But I know that for me, I had wished that I had someone tell me that, look, go and learn about God's story with the Jews, and then it'll all start making sense.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I can totally agree with that. When you really start to get the context, of course there's like that drosh element of the hidden meaning, the things in the how a prophecy could be applied to a future generation, etc. But when they're trying to say there's an outright fulfillment here of something and the context has absolutely just nothing to do with that, that's what that's what you need to get the grasp on first, is what is it telling me, and then you can start to dig deeper into hidden meanings and prophecies and so.
Well, also, everybody asks the question, why is the word Jesus is never mentioned in Tanakh? He's never mentioned by name. It's always like, oh, well, he was here and he was there. Like, we have to read between the lines to find him. That's crazy.
Right.
That's crazy.
And the only times in Tanakh where the truncated version of Yehoshua, when you see Yeshua, it's talking about someone else. It's either
right.
Joshua the son of Nun, or the high priest Yehoshua. Never is it referring to, and never is it some type of exclusive term for this future messianic figure. Well, his only one name by which we can be saved. Well, sorry, that name kind of existed long before this guy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I know. They're after the fact trying to take stuff and put it into their belief system after the fact. That alone should make you suspicious of what they're doing. Because I really think that if God was going to send his only son to save the world, that it would have been stated in Tanakh many times over, so the Jews would know. Why would God want to trick them? That doesn't even make sense.
Sure. Why would one of the greatest men who ever lived, King David, why would he write in the Psalms, this day I have begotten you, speaking of himself, if he knew via Ruach HaKodesh, the spirit of prophecy, that one day someone of his line was going to come and save the world as God's only begotten son?
Exactly.
Why did David say it about himself? There's just so many problems. It's mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing beyond belief that people have bought into this so easily. But I do think at its core, it's because it's the ultimate victim relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Your religion, I mean. It's the ultimate victim religion. Because if you're a victim and you don't understand that God empowers you to master yourself,
right,
then you love this idea that you don't have to do nothing.
Sure.
It's great. I'll just escape it all.
Yeah.
So that's why. It's a fantasy. Yeah. And we know humans love fantasies.
Sure.
So
sure.
It plays into that whole thing.
Yep. Very good point. Very good point. And that's some good advice. If you're going to read it, make sure you read it in context.
Mm-hmm.
It's important.
That's the only way, yeah. Otherwise, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, the majority of the book of their Holy Bible, is the Old Testament or the Tanakh. And that's what they're the least familiar with, They know Genesis 1, the story of Joseph, and 5 verses from Isaiah,
Because it's old news. It's old news. Why should we bother studying it?
Yeah.
What an insult to God.
Honestly. If that's true. That is so insulting, because they believe that's equally as, in their view, that is equally as heaven-breathed as their New Testament is.
Right.
So why just ignore it? But if I'm being honest, I don't really think they read the New Testament either. But what I've noticed is the majority, they show up on a Sunday, they get their ears tickled, and they leave.
well, it's all warm and fuzzy. They got their fellowship, they
That's
got their
true. That's true.
potlucks and their softball games and their trips to Disneyland. And
Hmm.
oh, it's so wonderful. I have all my friends. I think it's a social club for the most part.
Definitely. Did you struggle with that at all when you first left, like the community aspect?
No,
Me either.
I always, I never really wanted. I never really got into. Like I said, when I went to church, I want to worship God. That's why I came here. I went to this church one time, and I got so pissed off because because I walked. It was a mega church,
Mm.
and there's people like rolling carts around with books and mugs and T-shirts, and then they had all these different little sanctuaries, and one of them I stuck my head in, and it would look like Starbucks in there.
Yeah.
And they were having a service, and the people were sitting in the back eating pastries and drinking coffee, and I'm thinking, what are these people doing?
Yeah.
What are they doing?
It's an enterprise. It really
I
is.
said,
Those churches are an
I
enterprise.
am not staying. I am not staying.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, yeah, I just, ugh. and so I didn't really want to be around them that much because I thought this is so hypocritical. It's not even funny.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was in college, I had the not necessarily a mega church, but it was big. I mean, it was big. It could probably hold over 1,000 people, and there was well over a couple hundred that went there. So I had like the big church experience, and I had the small church experience.
Uh-huh.
In my experience, there wasn't a whole lot of difference other than just the quality of the music and that type of thing. But at the end of the day, those loving smiles fade after a while. When it's your first, like I said, when it's your first Sunday in there, everyone is, oh, we're so glad to have you here, kissing you on the cheek and giving you a hug and wanting to take you home to meet their daughter. You know what I mean? And cooking you lunch. You know what I mean? That type of thing. But once you're there for a year, you're just, we got you already. We don't need to be nice to you anymore.
I know. I have so many stories of wacky stuff that happened to me in churches. I could do a podcast on it because I had so many things. And that's not really what opened my eyes or anything. I
Sure.
just figured these people they're just weird, right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anyway, now I see that if you don't have accountability and you think that you can just do what you want because your sins are already forgiven ahead of time, well, then why be good? Then why act right? Why treat people good?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of them have that attitude. They're like, I'm forgiven, so I can just stab her in the back or throw her under the bus because Jesus saved me. And it's and people say, oh, Christians don't think that. And I'm thinking, yes, they do.
Most certainly
know a lot of them.
Most certainly
They
do.
have no conscience whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because Jesus saved them.
Yeah.
And I could not get into that.
Right. Sad. It's sad because there are some nice, beautiful people out there who are Christian. I will never take that away. Some of the best people I've ever met, lifelong friends who are Christian.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that what you just said doesn't ring true for so many also. That I'm a child of the King. I'm not. How's that go? Not something but forgiven. I can't think of how that goes. Like not perfect but forgiven or something like that.
Right.
Okay, like lean into that all you want, but at the end of the day, if you're not focusing on your own self-work, I mean, you're just, yeah, as you said, you're just without a conscience. That means you can justify anything to yourself that you do because, well, I'm just a disgusting sinner.
Right.
And that's sad. That's ruining people's self-esteem, I think.
I do too. And how do you reconcile that you reap what you sow with you can be vicariously forgiven? It doesn't even, the two things don't even add up. I mean,
right.
It's like, well, which one is it? Do you have to sow good things to reap the benefits, or can you just so whatever, and still reap the benefits.
Sure.
Doesn't add up.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, it's tough, and I mean that exact dispute even comes up in the New Testament itself when you have some books saying yes, your works are important, and then others saying no, you can't crucify Jesus twice, so you just gotta, that's, it's all a mess, and it's so sad. It's so sad. It really opened. The more I started studying deep these type of issues, I really started to understand why for 1900 years the church just didn't let parishioners have books. We're going to tell you what the doctrine is, and that's it. You're not going to be able to look it up for yourself. So I understand now. I understand why the Catholic Church was so adamant about that type of thing. My friend is from Louisiana, and he told me, he's like, yeah, I think it wasn't even until the 1920s that Catholic churches in Louisiana their parishioners were allowed to have Bibles. And I was like, dude, that just blows my mind. Like, how do you expect your parishioners to even know anything when it's just on a Sunday? What we tell you is true is what's true, and that's all you have to worry about.
Go do your Our Fathers and Hail Marys and shut up.
Yeah, yeah, and don't eat any meat on Friday.
Don't ask questions.
Yeah.
Do it. So, I always found that strange, but my mom used to say to me when I would go to confession, she'd say, "You better pack a lunch."
Oh my word, that's funny. But Luanne, it's truly been a pleasure. I'm so happy that you came on here with me today. This has been great. Some great insights, and I really hope we can do this again soon, even if we just talk about some of those crazy church experiences.
Yeah, like I said, I have enough of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this has been great. I've enjoyed it, and I'm so glad that we finally connected.
Yeah, definitely. You want to talk about your podcast? Just let everyone know.
Yeah, I just launched it recently, and I'm looking for people to come on and tell their stories about how they came out of Christianity and got into the teachings of the Hebrew Scriptures. And I think it's so helpful for all of us to sort of share because we can then encourage each other on this journey. So that was the point of the podcast, but I'm also having rabbis on the podcast. I have a rabbi that's going to be on shortly talking about how to convert to Judaism. Cool. And some of the obstacles and challenges of doing that. And Rabbi Stuart Federer, he's coming on the podcast later this month.
Brilliant. Nice.
So I'm hoping to bring a healthy amount of education on there, but also, like I said, the main focus is going to be the stories of former Christians. So anyone who's listening, if you would like to come onto the podcast, you can send me an email at inthelight1828@gmail.com and just let me know and we can connect.
Cool. Yeah, and I'll reach out to anyone who has been on the Leaving Idolatry series here on this show and let them know you're doing the same thing. They're all happy to share their story, and I'm sure they would be for you too. And if it's any consolation, you have one volunteer here, I'll gladly share. But yeah, like I said, it's been truly a pleasure. Excited about that book. I can't wait to hunker down and knock that book out. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's a quick read, so anyone can go on there and it's a quick, easy read. So, but there's a lot in it, but it won't take you long to get through it.
Cool.
So,
page turner, I'm sure. Especially for people that haven't heard any of that stuff before, they're going to be just blown away.
Yeah, as we were.
Yeah, and I did notice you have some new music out.
Yes, I just released 2 singles from an album I'm working on called Songs of Praise and Joy, and I'm hoping to have that album finished before the end of this year.
Cool.
But all the songs are based on the Hebrew Scriptures.
Awesome. Well, if you ever need an impromptu saxophone solo, just let me know. I got you covered.
You play sax?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my. Well, we need to talk. For
sure. Cool. Everyone, Luanne Hunt, brilliant. Check out that channel. Check out the podcast. Are you on all platforms?
I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube.
Cool. Cool. In the Light, and you said that was called Jesus to Judaism? Something?
The podcast is called From Jesus to Judaism.
Cool.
And my website is insidethefaith.com.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah, we'll link that in the description. Everyone, please, please, please check that out. I will just link the website, I think, because you can probably find all these different things on the website itself, whether it be the book and the podcast and all these different things, right?
Everything's on there and a lot of other stuff too. So
cool. So I will link Inside the Faith in the description. So please check that out. I'm sure she'd appreciate it. You're gonna learn something. It's gonna be great. And as far as resources, also in the description, you just mentioned Rabbi Federo. We have his How to Learn Hebrew in 1 Hour class in the description. Check that out. Brilliant resource. I think he told me it's up over 200,000 views now, so it's incredible.
that's awesome.
And we have numerous other resources, Rabbi Singer's books, Rabbi Federo's book, some books by Davon Mays. So if even some of the Jesus and pagan myth type stuff, we have a little bit of everything. The Noachide life, the Divine Code, all these different resources. Just click the link, takes you right to it. And, it really helps everyone out. And as I always say, you're going to learn something from it. But yeah, in conclusion, I really want to thank you. I'm just overjoyed that you came on with me today. Beautiful. We had a great conversation. And I think it's going to really just enhance and increase the faith of whoever listens to this.
Well, I thank you for having me on too. This has been awesome. I'm excited to get to talk to you and to talk to your audience because, like I said, we all need to start connecting more.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is incredible.
Thank
you.
I
appreciate it.
Likewise. Incredible. But everybody, this was the Exodus Project. Luanne Hunt, I'm your host, Steve Eisenhower, and until next time, we'll see you on the other side, everybody.